Welcome to the Village Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Glenn. In this series of episodes, we'll deep dive into two key categories: nature connection and creating a healthy sense of community. As a listener, you will be brought to that place where nature and community come together. You've probably heard the phrase, "It takes a village to raise a child." But what does it take to raise a village? Or better yet, what does it take to raise a nature-connected village? That's been one of my driving questions for the past 2 decades, and I'm excited to share this journey with you. Welcome back, villagers. Today's topic is the Wander Years. Not the Wonder Years, not the TV show from the 80s. There's probably another podcast out there about it, but this one is not it. So if you're here for the Wonder Years podcast, please keep looking. Now, for the Wander Years, what am I referring to? Well, if we were to look at the life cycles, the life stages of human beings, we can see that there's these different stages that we go through. So from birth and infancy, early childhood, later childhood, early adolescence, later adolescence, adulthood, earlier and later adulthood, and hopefully, finally, elderhood. And we can enter these stages consciously, and we can honor these stages consciously, or we can ignore them and just kind of let things play out. You know, what we're here to talk about today is that wandering time, the wander years, which is the stage of late adolescence, early adulthood, so later teenage and into your 20s. And at that age, it's a really interesting time because our brains are still developing, but they're developing more and more every year, and we're leaving behind this childhood kind of fantasy, imaginative play and experience of the world. Not to say that we're not still imaginative. And most young people up to that point have, gone to school, been in their parents' homes their whole lives up to there. And we start to hit this point where it's like, I want to get out and see what the world is. I want to see what's out there. I want to see who I am. I want to learn about myself, and I want to learn about other people, and I want to see other places and travel. And that's what I mean by the wander years, WANDER. It's that time of timelessness, of not knowing fully where I'm going or where I'm going to end up, but I just know I want to go. And it starts with that inner feeling of like, I need something that's out there. What I need is not here anymore. What I need is not in the home anymore. Whereas a young child, what we need is often in the home. It's our family. It's things that are provided for at home. And then we shift into this, what I need, what I'm seeking is out there. And now I need to leave home and go out there on this journey to see what I'm made of and see what the world is made of and be tested and be challenged and overcome things and figure things out. Use my brain, use my wits, use my skills. And it's a really amazing time. I know I'm lucky enough to have gotten to enter that in my later teens. And I did a lot of traveling. I would work, save up money, quit the job, live out of my truck, travel around, take classes, live and camp in the woods a lot of times. And I loved it. I did that for about a decade or more. And sometimes I still do it. Sometimes I still go back to that feeling, that experience. To me, it's excitement and adventure. Not even that long ago, I went on a road trip where when I left home, I didn't know where I was going. I was either going to head towards northern Michigan or Wyoming. And I didn't know until I hit that point on the interstate when I had to make the decision. And I just was like, okay, I'll go this way. And I went north to Michigan. And then the next time I went out, I ended up going west out to South Dakota. I didn't even make it to Wyoming. But I love that feeling. I love that. And once you've lived that in those years, you can still harness that. You can still go back to that. You can still tap into that power and the gift of that life stage. There's a reason why so many movies portray this type of journey. You know, Lord of the Rings is an excellent example. In the first one with Sam and Frodo, I love that scene where they're heading out on this journey into the unknown. They don't know fully what they're going to face, where exactly they're going. They're carrying this ring. They're heading out. And they stop and get to a point. Sam stops and Frodo's like, "Hey, what's up?" And he says, "This is the furthest I've ever gone. Once we cross that line right up ahead, I've never been that far. I don't know what lies beyond it." And I love that scene. It's a moment of showing, you know, it's the hero's journey and the call to adventure. And it's portrayed so well in that scene. And all too often today, sadly, a lot of young people are sort of corralled into this other pattern that today's society feels is important. And that is, you know, nose to the ground, get good grades. Which college are you going into? Pour yourself into that for 4 to 8 years, and then go straight to a career so that you can get married and have kids and all of that stuff. And if you start to stray from that, people start getting worried. You know, with a lot of families, a lot of these young people who do start to go out and enter these wander years, it's often met with a lot of fear and worry and trying to correct and direct back onto the path that you're expected to take. And I think it's important to look at and ask the questions of, where did these stories come from? Why do we do the things that we do? What's at the root of it? And what are the feelings, the emotions that come with that? Is it out of fear? Is it out of anxiety? Or is it out of purely seeking to know ourselves and to find happiness and joy in life? And there's often this unintended consequence when we try to persuade someone to not listen to that inner voice, that inner calling. And that consequence is we're essentially saying, don't trust yourself. If I don't trust you, you shouldn't either. However, a lot of people who've lived close to the earth, who understand seasonal cycles, natural cycles, understand these human cycles. And we understand that this is a natural cycle and that it has a purpose, a very powerful purpose. And that something happens out there when we're allowed to go out into the unknown and go and journey like this. We learn a lot about ourselves. We learn about people. We form relationships. And we get to see who we are without all of the pressure, you know, of society saying do this and that. And man, is that so good to hear or feel and experience at that age. And maybe some of you listening have experienced that. I hope so, you know. And if you haven't gotten to experience that, you know, maybe you have in some small way. It might not have been years. Maybe it was a week or a few weeks. You can still connect with that feeling and just know that it's never too late to go back to a life stage and harvest the gift or the wisdom that comes through that life stage. So I know it might seem like it, but hey, we all probably have had friends who are as old as we are or older who've like kind of left their job and they're like, hey, I'm going to move to Europe and go backpacking, or I'm going to New Zealand and I'm going to backpack in New Zealand, or I'm going on a sailing trip for a month. You know, these are all those things, all those kinds of timeless wandering activities, or a long bicycle trip or motorbike trip. And so I'm putting this out there as a podcast in hopes that we can bring this into our conversations more and talk about these things and ask, how can we support the young people around us? How can we support those who are entering that life stage or in that life stage, because it's also often really hard for them because they're expected to work, get their own job, pay all their own bills. And it can be tough to make enough money to do that. So I know whenever I see a young person who's trying to do that kind of thing and they're struggling financially, I like to try to help them out. Some years ago, we did a GoFundMe for several teenagers to go do some trips and have some really profound adventures. And I just want to encourage that, instead of just like, okay, now you're an adult, good luck, see you later, hope you get through this and hope you find a good job and work. It's like, what if we just like remember that they're human beings and they're just learning what it's like to be an adult in this world? And what if we encouraged and supported them going out on these kinds of wanders and journeys into the world to really see what it's like for them? And then when they come back home, if we hold a space for them, that's the other key to this, is not just supporting them going out, but the return home is really something to be mindful about. How do we receive someone back from a journey like that? Ideally, they're greeted with village, with community, with friends and family and song, and an openness to see and learn, who is this person? Who have you become? What adventures have you been on? What have you learned about yourself? What have you learned about the world? Who are you now? And opening that space for storytelling so that you can catch their story and help them to tell it, and open that space to receive them back into their community of people with open ears, not just open arms, but open ears, hearing their story. What have they learned along their way? Just imagine that right now. If you have had it, imagine what that was like for you. And if you've never had it, we can imagine what that might be like. And yeah, it might stir up some sadness thinking about it, because it's like, gosh, I never had that. Well, the time that we are in our lives is a time of looking at those things that we didn't have and we wish that we did, and creating that for the next generation. That's how I feel. That's how I go through life right now. It's like, I didn't have it, so I'm going to create it. And I don't see anyone else around me creating it, but I feel the need. I see the need. So let's do this. And I'll say that time of receiving someone back from their journey and hearing their story may not be the best time for you to share your story, right? We want to be conscious of not cutting them off or cutting their story short or bombarding them with all of our own stories. So may this podcast inspire and get this conversation going or continuing, or bringing the conversation back to life in your life and the lives of those around you. So this is a short one this week. Thanks for listening. If you are enjoying these podcasts, then feel free to leave a review or share this with a friend. That would help just get this out there to more people. And you can always check out my link tree that's found in the About section of the podcast. There you can connect with me and find my coaching page. So I coach people into connecting with themselves, connecting with nature, and ultimately finding their purpose in life so that they can live a more fulfilling life. There's also a link to my Patreon page, Village Mentor, which is a great resource for educators, nature mentors, forest school educators. There's a lot of great resources that will give you new tools, techniques for working with children and nature.